Hey,
Righty.
welcome. Oh, here we go. Welcome everybody to another Wednesday night show, late reject show. Tonight, or if you haven't noticed, today was Star Trek Day. Is Star Trek Day still for another 30 minutes? So we decided to do um, a Star Trek special because if you haven't noticed from all the memes, I'm a huge Star Trek nerd. Um, I can honestly say I have been my whole life because it was about 5 or 6. I want to say it was about 6 when I was introduced to it really heavily, and so yeah, we decided to talk about that. And I'm joined here with my co-host Cody
Hello.
and my beautiful co-host wife Lindsay.
Hello.
She's thrilled, I promise.
Today has been a day.
It's been a
And
long day.
Star Trek is hopefully the saving grace about this day. So,
Well, hopefully. I hope. It's over. The day's almost over.
yeah.
Anyway, so we decided to talk. Well, what I would like to talk about is Star Trek and what it means to us when we were introduced to it and the qualities we like about it. Because I'm one of those, I do not believe in bashing on Star Trek, even if you dislike some of the shows. I there are shows and movies that I like more than others, but I like it all. It's all Star Trek. It all has the same message, I think. And yeah, Cody, what do you like about Star Trek?
Well, there's two things I like about Star Trek. One, to me, to my knowledge, it's the only science fiction property that has an optimistic outlook on the future, right? Because most science fiction properties are dystopian or look what society and humans did to the world, and this is what happens when you don't pay attention. But what I love about Star Trek is it doesn't like not acknowledge all the terrible and atrocious things the human race has done. They fess up to it. They talk about it all the time. I mean, they talk about our current time as the past because it's in the future, but they talk about all the horrible things that humans have done and society has done. And I just love that that it's not inclusive, like it's for everybody. Like, and it was each iteration of Star Trek has done something interesting and new. Like the original series, you have an African American, a woman of color as a communication officer. You have an Asian male as a pilot, you know, and then each iteration takes it more. Like in the original series, the Klingons are the bad guys, but in Next Generation, Klingons are serving in the Federation. And then there's so many people I talk to or fans I know, people of color that talk about how much Deep Space Nine meant to them, like watching that and seeing that representation on screen. And it's continuing now with Discovery. We have 2 female actors of color that were marketed as the 2 leads of the series.
Right. Yeah, there's definitely been the diversity is definitely one of my favorite parts. Like you said, there were there was Uhura, there was Sulu, Asian male. You had Walter Koenig as Chekhov, who was not actually Russian, but he played a Russian, and especially
He's playing a Russian during the Cold War, so that's a pretty big statement there for an American TV show.
Right, and they got a lot of backlash on that, and there were a lot of stations throughout the South that refused to air Star Trek because of Uhura and Sulu and Chekhov. And
did you know this random fact that Nichelle Nichols wanted to quit the show because she felt like they weren't giving her much to do?
Mhm.
And you know who told her that she needed to be on television? Because just her being on primetime television at that time was a big deal. Do you know who that person was that she talked to?
Martin Luther King.
Yes, Dr. Martin Luther King junior
Mhm. Yes, Hey, I've been at this since I was 6. I know my roller deck brain. When it switches to Star Trek, I could probably give you some star dates and what. I could tell you what what level what level a certain room is on the Starship Enterprise. I had the blueprints to these things. I was a subscriber to Star Trek the magazine
Oh,
back in, I want to say, 99 through, I want to say, 2006, maybe
okay.
2005. But man, I would study the blueprints of the ships, the different classes of ships, the different races of aliens, the star charts. Like, I was really into this.
That's why your sister was so surprised when you brought a girl home and got married.
Yeah, like my parents were really surprised that that I got married to a woman, which there's nothing wrong with getting married to anyone else, but they really thought,
No, I think the fact that you were dating at all, they were just
yeah, just dating at
that's
all.
fantastic.
They were like, oh my God. Yeah. They actually said that to my face. They were
They
like,
said that to
son,
my face.
yeah, son, we just never thought you'd get married. You were always into your Star Trek and Star Wars. We thought that was what you
were married
that was
to.
your thing. And I was like, well, no, I'm not a complete, well, I'm not going to use the word nerd because I am a big nerd, but I'm not a complete closet case, but yeah, and you mentioned in the show, our past is canon. Like they don't excuse anything. Like that's one of my main loves about it is it's a continuation of our timeline. It's something that we could possibly see in our future, and we could get into the tech, the tech that was kind of foreseen on Star Trek.
I
You look
mean,
at
flip phones. They
yeah,
saw flip phones, yeah.
yeah, look
And
at
iPads.
Video
communicating.
chatting, how we're discussing right now.
Yeah, iPads,
Mhm.
the LCAR pads that they had in the show back in Next Gen, back in the late '80s and early '90s. You would look at that stuff and be like, "Oh yeah, that's cool. That's so futuristic." And then here we are with iPads and basically tricorders that can give us things. They have attachments for medical personnel now that attach to your phone that can read body temperatures and body signs and stuff like that. So, I mean, we're basically carrying around a combination tricorder slash communicator. And I mean, how cool is that?
I'm not
You
gonna
know?
lie, when flip phones were a thing, I used to pretend like it was a thing to beam myself up. I would go, beam me up.
Oh yeah. I have the little chime on my phone, and it's funny because yesterday, and I haven't shown Lindsay yet, but there's a guy on Etsy who sells cases for your phone, and it looks like a communicator. So it's got the cover on it, so you can flip it open. It just clips onto your phone, and you can sit it flips open like a communicator. And I have to have one now. I saw it, and I have to have one for my phone. But I don't know if you've seen them, but they have the next gen comm badges that Bluetooth to your phone, so you can tap them and talk through them, like your phone. So I mean, you could go on and on about how cool the tech is that we are seeing from this, and then you have the news of NASA like working on, uh, like faster than light drives and stuff like that, and this stuff is becoming a possibility, and it's insane. It's cool, but sometimes it's hard to fathom, about how far we are advancing. Uh, Not only that, but the technology is advancing, but humanity seems to be taking some steps backwards, apparently, which is disheartening.
No, I think Star Trek acknowledged that, though. When you talk about, like, the first warp space flight in Star Trek, it's always like things were pretty shitty here at the time.
Yeah, you're right. If you look at First Contact with like Zephyr and Cochrane,
Thank you. That was
yeah,
the name I could not
inventing
recall.
warp drive, when they during that period they had just finished World War III, like
Mm-hmm.
everything was in shambles.
Isn't the Earth like a nuclear waste zone, pretty much?
Not really waste. Like they had areas that, like, there was fallout, but it was
Right.
nuclear war that eventually, you know, just made everything into shambles. And then you've got in the first season of Next Generation, the first episode, Encounter at Farpoint. Q takes them back, and they're in that totalitarian, like, I don't know, that dystopia. And I don't know if you were probably at work, but we just got finished watching the Star Trek Day program that Paramount put on. And they had like Will Wheaton. I mean, they had like everybody, and they were showing. They had panels for the new shows and stuff like that. But they showed the season 2 trailer of Picard, and he snaps his fingers, and it looks like he's taking them back to where like if that hadn't changed, like if they had continued to stay in that timeline, everything's it was almost like a mirror universe. And I can't say much because it was all in the previews. I don't know what's going on, but it looks like a mirror universe situation almost, where Starfleet is kind of evil or really imperialistic.
Well, if they're doing the mirror universe, they could have called me to be evil Picard because I have a goatee and I'm bald. So
yes, yeah, yeah, you could do an evil a
Please
mirror.
be evil Picard for Halloween.
Oh,
it's
you
not
should.
that far away.
Yeah, you totally should.
Because that's from the original series, right? The mirror universe, they all had goatees.
Very evil goatees. You're gonna have to sharpen the edges of that thing.
They unfortunately they didn't do a mirror universe in Next Gen, but they did one in DS9. Had like a 1 or 2 parter, and Enterprise had a mirror universe 2-parter, which was great. I won't go into it. I don't, because if anybody, and it's all, surely if you're a Trek fan, you'd have seen it by now, but I'm not going to spoil it for anybody. And I can't remember the episode name, but just find them In a Mirror Darkly 1 and 2. And I think it's in the 4th season, the 4th and final season. They tie it in with the Tholians in the original episode. Remember the Tholian web in the original series? And the ship, one of the ships, a Federation ship, disappears inside of the web. Well, the Tholians, they moved it to like an alternate universe. It was a gateway or a way to travel between the mirror universe and the prime universe. So Archer and them, they find a ship from the original series era, and they hijack it, and it's really cool. And if you haven't seen it, I highly suggest it. But anyway, enough of that. I could go on forever. Lindsay, what do you like about Star Trek? Because I'm afraid once I start, I will.
They don't have a long enough show.
Yeah,
for your Star Trek knowledge.
Could be here all night. Anyway.
Well, my first introduction to Star Trek, aside from like seeing a couple episodes of the original series here and there on, not TV Land, but I know there were TV channels that played them just really late at night when nobody was watching. But when I was growing up, I would spend summers at my dad's, and my dad worked nights And I was kind of unsupervised, so I would just stay up all night watching Next Gen on whatever awesome cable package my dad had at the time. Next Gen and Quantum Leap. Is that Scott Bakula?
That's your Captain Archer.
Yes, Captain Archer.
I love Quantum Leap.
And I love Enterprise because I loved Quantum Leap. I know people dog on it and make fun of the theme song and everything, but I still think it's pretty awesome.
Enterprise was great.
It was. I think T'Pol is my favorite character.
Yeah.
From Enterprise. But I remember mostly Picard and his relationship with Whoopi Goldberg's character. Christopher, you're gonna have names.
Guinan.
Thank you.
Guinan, yeah.
And it just felt like the relationships between people were really genuine, and that people, for the most part, other than like obvious villains, had my brain is so fried, and I'll come up with the real words soon. I'm just gonna say, like, positive motivations for the work that they did, and and working with each other, and coexisting with like new species and races of aliens. And it was like nobody really blinked. It was just like, well, how are we going to accommodate each other in our interaction? Yeah, diplomacy. Well, not even just diplomacy, just like that. I mean, that's one way to put it, but more just like, well, of course this is going to be a positive relationship, and how can we help each other was always the approach. And I do, since then, and since meeting Christopher and being immersed in Star Trek, I'm rubbing my temples because of the day and not because of Star Trek at all. But since being married to Christopher and kind of gaining almost like a master's degree in Trek at this point over the last almost 12 years, I really appreciate, like you said, Cody, like the positive outlook that Star Trek has. It's like, yeah, we really screwed up, but the mission from here on out is to do better. It's to explore, it's to learn, it's to gain knowledge, it's to build bridges and help in the best way that we can, and not like I think the structure of Starfleet is very militaristic in its presentation, but it didn't feel like.
Well, they touch on that too, because it goes back and forth between. It kind of depends on what story arc, because you have a time in Star Trek, and I didn't mean to butt in, but I'll explain it.
I am not wording good, and I would be happy for you to finish my thought, because I know you know what I feel about Star Trek.
Because that has been an issue. If you depending on what story arc, like if you get into the Dominion War and towards the end of DS9 season 5, I think is when it starts coming in. They do turn more militaristic because they're at war, and they shift from a matter of fact in Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country, that was the big deal. They were like, we can't. Are we talking about mothballing Starfleet? You know, because they were people in there that were like, no, we need to keep up with, especially with the tensions with the Klingons and their Praxis exploding. Their mining moon exploding, and they having 50 Earth years of life left. You know, you had people in Starfleet, they were like, no, we need to bulk up, and we need to become more militaristic, and we need to shift away from exploration. And the original series, it was all about exploration. It was about, exploring strange new worlds and boldly going and meeting new species and whatnot. But you get into the movies, and thanks to Wrath of Khan and stuff like that, you start to see them become a little more militaristic with the uniforms. They have the monster marines.
I mean, Wrath of Khan is basically Moby Dick in space.
Right, right, exactly.
Yep. And I mean, Starfleet is very much modeled after the Navy.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Right. And then sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, with their rankings and their officer levels and like how they conduct the spacecraft that they travel on is very much how the Navy conducts a ship. It's the same
Right.
thing.
Right. And that's what, there's interviews with Gene Roddenberry where he's like, yeah, that's what he was in the Air Force. And he goes, when it came to these ships and the Starfleet, why, I mean, what else would I model it after of? It's going to be our Navy. So they took elements of that. But let's see, where was I going? Oh yeah. By the time Next Gen comes around, they kind of had shifted back into the exploration, because you look at the Enterprise, look at the ship. Everybody made fun of that ship, but that is one of the coolest ships ever, because people were making fun of it because they were you had families on there and all that. But
I don't know why that's funny.
Yeah,
why that's worth mocking. That's what we all want, is like community.
That's what that ship was, basically a science vessel. It wasn't built for war. It wasn't, even though they had lots of battles in the episodes and stuff like that. You had multiple decks of just nothing but science labs. You had classrooms. You even had cetacean lab, which they carried whales and dolphins. I mean, it was a massive ship, and they could carry all that stuff. And with their enlisted members, why wouldn't they want to carry their families? So because, you're going out into space for, could be years on end. So who would want to do that? And, you're not going out there with like, oh yeah, I'm going to run into the Borg every 10 episodes. That was the whole point, was they're going out to explore. So when Next Gen came back around, again, depending on the story plot and everything, it was all exploration based. And then when the Borg came in, of course they ramped up the military ships. They had the Saber class, and the Defiant came in, and those are all in the those are all little warships. Those are for nothing but pew pew and blowing stuff up. And that was their defense against the Borg. And then after the Borg threat, the Dominion War came in. So when the Dominion War ramped up, you saw it shift back towards a militaristic Starfleet. So it kind of goes back and forth. They go from exploration, to, oh no, we're being attacked by this enemy. We're going to shift to military.
Even with like, I understand that when you're Gene Roddenberry, you write what you know, and like if you the structure of a naval ship makes sense, because everybody has a job to keep everybody else alive. Like you're all working. It's very is it symbiotic? Is that the right big word I'm trying to use? Relationship amongst everybody. Like there's no like you're a lower class or a lower ranking of someone, so you get treated worse. It's we all have jobs. We all have to be focusing on keeping this whole thing moving forward. And the Prime Directive kind of reins in the potential for it to be a super imperialistic colonizing force. Like we don't, we mind our business. We're just observing. We're not, obviously that doesn't work out, because one of the great captain moves of every starship is screw the Prime Directive. We're going to save those people, or we're going to do this, or we're going to do that for whatever reason. But,
well, that's, you say that, and yeah, that is true. They show that, but that's one thing I liked about Captain Picard is in shows you saw him struggle with that. Like there was this goes into underlying messages in the shows, and we'll get into that. But there was a show in the first or second season of TNG, and maybe the first season, I can't remember the name, but they're delivering medicine to a race of people, but they find out that it's actually a drug. And you might remember it because it had the second in command. The guy, one of the main characters in this, not Merritt Buttrick, what's his name? Can't remember his name, but he was Khan's second command in Wrath of Khan. But he shows up in this episode as one of the main characters. And they're hooked on this drug, but they've been that way for generations. And Picard has to struggle. Like we know that they're killing themselves. They're strung out on this. Like there's no hope for them. So he struggles. Do I give this to them, or am I the one?
Is this enabling? Is this destroying them in the long term?
Yeah. Do I have the right to do that? Do I have the right as an officer or another being to do that? What gives me the right to interfere? And that's the whole episode.
Okay, so that does help. That helps me sort of refine my appreciation for Star Trek into more streamlined thoughts. Is the struggle is what Star Trek is about. Like, it's not perfect. It's not. I'm sure it has its moments where it kind of whitewashes certain aspects of the real world applications of the things that happen. But I feel like the whole point of Star Trek is to present these questions and present the struggle from various perspectives so that we're actually thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's entertainment, so it still has to be palatable. It still has to be enjoyable. It still has to have explosions in the vacuum of space, which don't happen, or fires or whatever,
right.
Scientific inaccuracies. But I feel like that struggle with those issues, because those issues are universal, no matter how they present themselves to individuals. Like, what scale of that struggle are you dealing with in your real life? Here's a more objective, out-of-body example for you to examine and think about and mull over and learn and grow from, which I kind of hope was the point.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like the message that, like, we just listened to every member of the Star Trek cast and family who could be there talk about what Star Trek meant to them, and that seemed to be the thing. Was like, Star Trek speaks to people because it's unifying in its examination of these problems that we have. Like, it does feel right now like we're taking steps backwards, or that this is all going to get way worse and we're not going to get to the Star Trek future. But the Star Trek story is that it did get worse, and it did get horribly bad for us before we moved forward from it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I really like about it. And it is a very diverse presentation of those struggles. Like, maybe it doesn't seem very diverse. Maybe the original series was a big deal with, like, this one character of that profile, or this one character of that other profile. Like, but it has gotten hugely diverse and much more representative of everyone. That's mostly what I appreciate about Star Trek. And the idea of outer space, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. You had boundaries being pushed
from the beginning. Like, again, going back to Next Gen, there's an episode with Riker where there's an androgynous species that are neither male or female, and Riker falls in love with one of the characters, and that was... Riker was already chaotic by...
Oh, Riker, basically Captain Kirk in training.
Pretty much. Riker had some
I feel like Riker
on,
had some improvements from...
he's a much more healthier version of Kirk, because, he's about 100 years in the future, and, he eventually has a very good relationship with Counselor Deanna Troi. But, he very much picks up some Kirky vibes early on in the series.
He's got that... I don't want to call it a twinkle. That grosses me out. But it's not a whole eyebrow, but it's a look that you see in almost every episode. It's very impish about him. That's the Kirkish quality that I see in Riker. But I love what fans have taken Star Trek and turned it into. I love seeing little stories where people are like, they take pieces of canon and then they spin this whole character profile for someone, and I'm just like, yes, that's who that person is now. I can't see it any differently. That's perfect. And Riker is very chaotic bisexual energy, but in a positive way and a much more healthy way, like you said, than Kirk. But that's probably more a reflection of the time that original series was made and Next Gen was made. So
Yeah, there's a 20-year difference. Kirk is very much of that classic heroic type. Shoot first, ask questions later. I'm going to do what I think is the right thing to do, even if the hell with the consequences type of attitude.
Right. More swashbuckler than
much more swashbuckler. But I mean, he had Spock there to kind of even him out.
I love Spock and McCoy because they really were his conscience. They sat on his shoulder, and
I'm not gonna lie, McCoy might be my favorite character of all Star Trek. He's just a grumpy old man on a ship, being the doctor. He curses all the time.
He's gonna complain the whole time. He's not gonna like one minute of it.
And it's a heartbreaking scene, and it's from the least liked movie out of the whole series, except by me.
Don't like.
But in Star Trek V, when Sybok is brainwashing them or showing them their pain, and he brings up.
Is it the scene with his dad?
It's the night where he's got to euthanize his dad or take him off life support, and his dad begs him, like, just do it, please. I'm in so much pain, and he struggles with that. That should have won an Oscar. That right there was probably the only point in Oscar. There have been some great stuff throughout Star Trek, but not quite Oscar worthy. But that one scene should have gotten a mention or something, but they were just too busy hating on that movie. But that one scene was so great. That was the most intimate and open you ever saw McCoy at all. And it was great. And that's why I love that movie, because it shows
his compassion through all. He is very gruff, and he has that demeanor of someone who sees the grossest, worst moments for everybody on the ship for the most part. And it kind of takes away that cynicism and that wall that he builds up, and shows you that it's he's a doctor because he cares about people and he has compassion for people.
Well, of course, because think about that scene in the voyage home where they're in the hospital, and I don't even know what that lady is going through, but he's like, oh my God, why are they treating you like this? I can fix this right now.
She was on dialysis and had kidney failure.
And he's like, this is so barbaric.
Yeah, he goes,
still doing this?
He looks at the chart, he goes, dialysis? Something else. Oh my God, is it the Dark Ages? And he tosses the clipboard.
He's not wrong.
You take 2 of these and call me in the morning.
He was just upset about the method of medicine. He didn't even get into the whole insurance access to healthcare part of the Dark Ages.
He walks into that operating room, and they're about to cut open Chekhov's head to relieve some pressure on the brain. And he walks in and he's picking up instruments, and he goes, my God, what is this? This is, y'all are barbaric. And, he takes out that little thing and pops
way to play it cool as a time traveler, by the way. You're not supposed to walk in and shit on everybody's what you view as regression, because you have all the cool space toys to fix people.
And you're
supposed to play it cool and pretend like you know what's going on.
In The Undiscovered Country, this is probably the 2 greatest McCoy scenes to me, is after Gowron gets Chancellor Gowron gets shot. Remember, they beam aboard, they disable the gravity, and they beam aboard and assassinate him. So they beam over to help, and they get him up on the table, and he's like, I don't know his anatomy, and he's trying CPR and everything he can, even though he does have a certain dislike for the Klingons. It was still another being, and he's going to give it everything he can. He's going to follow. Yeah, he took an oath. He's going to follow that doctor's creed no matter what or who it is, and he's going to try to save him. And that was another good scene, because in the court, they're like, did you even try? How shaky are your hands? And he's like, my God, man, I tried. Like, you saw me. You were there. I tried to save him. I did everything I could. So that was another great scene.
You know, something I didn't know. I knew Nicholas Meyer directed Wrath of Khan and Undiscovered Country, which I think are the two best Star Trek movies, period. But he also had a hand in the script for The Voyage Home, which most people say that's also one of the best Trek films. So maybe Nicholas Meyer had something to do with making those films seem more cinematic, because I'm not going to lie, I enjoy the original series for what it is. It's fun. It's a little cheesy. When I was younger, I didn't appreciate it as much, because before digital restoration, you could kind of see like the strings on the Enterprise and stuff. But I've gone to appreciate the original series. But I always felt like Roddenberry perfected his premise with the Next Generation of what he was doing with the original series. But the films, the original series cast is a much better collection of films, and I feel like they feel more cinematic than the Next Generation films. A lot of the complaints with the Next Generation films is, it just feels like a 2-hour episode.
I can see that. Like, especially with...
How are you going to complain about a 2-hour-long episode of your favorite show?
Especially with Insurrection. Like, that was just
that
like
one especially, yeah.
That was a 2-part. It was good, but it was just like a 2-part episode that,
to be continued.
Yeah, to be continued. And but yeah, I mean, yeah, those movies really fleshed out like that crew, that original series crew. And I'm with you. Like, I love the original series. Like, when I watch them now, I can kind of, which I've seen them all, I can kind of look past the cheese, but I'm watching for what's this underlying message? What were they trying to get across in 1966, 67, 68, whatever, what were they trying to get across? I know last week I gave my kids the option. I said, okay, you can go to bed and listen to something, or you can let me pick a Star Trek and we'll watch it. You get to stay up a little bit longer. So they chose Star Trek. I'm like, okay, all right, let's push it a little bit. You're younger. I get it. It may not hold your attention, but we'll see. So I chose original series, Let This Be Your Last Battlefield, which has a great message. And if you're not familiar with it, what one guy has black on this half and white on this half, and the other guy is the opposite.
But exactly the
same. And that dealt with race issues. They had been going at it for centuries, and this one guy had been chasing this other guy across the galaxy for so long that by the time they got back to their planet, they had destroyed themselves because of their hate, their their race issues that they had. They just totally, the whole planet was destroyed, and they beamed down there, and that was it. They were going to spend their last remaining days chasing each other over the ruins of their planet because of their hatred. And, I talked to my boys and a little bit, but yeah, if you look at these messages in them, they were actually brilliant the way they snuck them in, and they were able to get a lot of things past the censors. Back in the day,
snuck them in. I think they just repackaged them.
Yeah, they just repackaged them, and it may seem like cheese. It is cheese. It's straight up cheese. But except for you start getting into the third season, they started turning into like Monster of the Week type shows. But the first and second season, they had a lot of underlying messages.
Twilight Zone-y.
Yeah, they had a lot of messages in there that were great.
You know what's funny? You mentioned Twilight Zone. Richard Matheson, author, who wrote several scripts for the Twilight Zone, also wrote scripts for the original Trek series.
Well, then that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Oh, what do you think about the motion picture? Because I know that motion picture and Final Frontier get the most hate, but I
Well,
absolutely love the
okay.
motion picture.
I think the motion picture looks amazing, and I
Mhm.
know I like the motion picture, and I know that a lot of Star Trek fans that were alive when that movie came out said it was a big deal to see that on the big screen. And this is like over a decade of Trek not existing,
Mhm.
unless you count the animated series that I think ran for 2 seasons.
Right.
But because of the success of Star Wars, they were able to bring Star Trek back. And I think it originally was supposed to be like another series,
Mhm.
but
Yes,
somehow,
phase two. Because
but I
Commander
get,
Sonic. Sorry, go ahead. I'm going
but
off.
I, well, if you have more context, please go ahead. I just know that it was originally supposed to be a pilot for a new iteration,
Mhm.
but then somehow they decided, oh, screw it, let's make it a movie.
Yeah, they were already into production. Um, do you remember the not Commander Sonic? Sonic was supposed to take Spock's place, but he died in the transporter accident. The gentleman that you see, um, he's the one that's in the radar station that first encounters V'ger, and they watch him on the. And if you go back and you'll see him. He was going to play Sonic on Phase Two, and I guess they felt kind of bad, so they gave him that little part in there. But it's like Nimoy was not supposed to come back. He didn't want to come back, and they really had to persuade him to come back for a motion picture. Who else was not coming back? I want to say maybe Chekhov was not going to come back, and possibly Sulu. Like it was going to be just a whole new kind of chopped up cast. And thanks to the motion picture, we were able to get the original cast back. Thank goodness. And but yeah, the motion picture, like I was one of those weird little kids. When I tell you, when I was 6 years old, my Uncle Mark, who's the one that introduced me to Star Trek, he gave me a video cassette, and it had the motion picture, The Wrath of Khan, and The Search for Spock on it. And I kept that thing for about a year and watched those back to back. No joke. Like I had one on every day. Like I was enamored with it, and I don't know why. And don't get me wrong, I was still in my Turtles and GI Joes and Star Wars and stuff like that. But man, something about Star Trek, and most people ask me why, because the motion picture is really boring, and I'm like, I don't know. There was something about it. I don't know if it was the ship or who knows? Who knows what it was, but it caught my attention. And I absolutely adore that movie. Like they just released it in 4K. And I saw a snippet of it, and it's absolutely gorgeous. But when people ask me why I like it, I'm like, it is the closest movie that resembles the original series. Like it's very cerebral. Like it's there's not a lot of action in it. Not a lot of explosions or anything like that. But it's very cerebral. It's got a great story. When you find out that V'ger is basically a probe that we sent out, and it got picked up by another civilization of robotic beings. I was hoping that they were gonna tie that in with the Borg. Like that was an early theory of mine. Like, man, what if Voyager satellite crash landed or got picked up by the Borg and they sent it back to collect data, and then it basically it was a living machine like a Borg is, and it collected so much data that it became what it was, V'ger. And when you think about it, when V'ger shows up, he was like, I want to meet the creator. And like, you can't, are you talking about God? What are you talking about? And V'ger was like, no, I've collected everything. I've collected all this data. I want to meet the creator. So that's when Decker was like, okay, he wants it wants to meet the creator. He's talking about man. So he merges with Decker and Leia, and that's when it I guess becomes self-aware and it dissipates or whatever. But I always thought that was very cool. Like, it wasn't this big standoff or showdown. It was just this being that had become self-aware and just wanted to meet its creator.
Yeah, that's as Trek as it gets. And I understand if people don't like Star Trek because of that very notion. It's not typically action packed. It's a show that deals with politics, religion, how we should treat people, laws, ethics. There's all these verbal discussions about the things that how we should operate as a society. There's phasers and explosions from time to time, but they're not waving laser swords and choking each other or having giant space battles all the time. So
right.
So I can understand if people don't like this because this is more pure sci-fi than other sci-fi properties, because a lot of other sci-fi properties have elements of fantasy in them.
And
I don't know. There's a little bit of fantasy dancing around in Star Trek that you can appreciate. I'm kind of, and if someone has actually watched Star Trek, and I mean sampled from various incarnations of it, and they still don't like it, I'm inherently suspicious of that person. That's like someone who's like, I hate dogs or I hate dessert. We gotta have a talk because.
Well, now I know people who don't like any of the shows really, and they just like the Kelvin films.
I'm not gonna say that I hate those because they were fun. They were.
You did do a little moment of silence and prayer, there right before you said that, but.
Okay, I will tell you out of all of Star Trek, okay, and that's saying something. My biggest gripe out of any Star Trek was that second Kelvin movie where they basically just rehashed and when they killed Kirk and Spock does no, I felt nothing. You go back to Star Trek 2 and you go to that part where Kirk's got to say goodbye to Spock and they're touching through the glass and everything. I will bawl like
they made a Hallmark Christmas ornament out of that scene in that movie.
They did. They did. You can hang it on your Christmas tree of Kirk and Spock.
Yeah. Dying of radiation. But they had history and that scene worked. They had friendship. They had history. That scene was gut-wrenching and it totally worked. Spock saved the Enterprise. Scotty and Bones are holding Kirk back from opening the door to try to get him out of there. And, he's like, no, it's too late. Scotty's like, no, it's too late already. He's gone. You need to say your goodbyes and deal with it. And, that right there, that would have me crying when I was 6. I remember crying during that part. My mom was like, are you okay? And I'm like, well, they killed Spock,
I think that's a normal reaction for a 6-year-old.
Yeah, nothing wrong with it. I still cheer for this.
They did kill Spock. He comes back.
Yeah, but even though he does come back, it's still very emotional.
It's a very powerful and poignant scene, and for a movie to just copy that without the emotional weight,
right? And
that is earned in that scene.
Even when Data blew up, I was like, no, they introduced the parts of B4.
I know Star Trek is 55 years old this year, but should we put spoilers on this later? We
if
talked about a lot of big plot points.
shame on you. No, yeah, spoiler alert. I'm sorry, guys.
Spoiler alert for all these movies
For
that have
everything. Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
been in
it's
existence.
19 years old. You know, I saw it in 2002. And what killed that movie?
That wasn't 19.
That came out a week before The Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers came out. So it was doomed to die. You know, I remember going to see it, and Data blew. I was with my uncle, and he almost stood up in the seat, and he was like, "What?"
Like he wanted his money back? What?
Yeah,
like how dare they?
Like, what the hell? And we both looked at each other, and I'm like, "Come on, man! Before the parts are there, they're gonna like, you know." And they do kind of fix that in Picard. You know,
that's a little bit.
but but yeah, even that moment wasn't as bad as them pulling that move in that movie, man.
I feel like those movies, I feel like when they came out, they were trying to like give Star Trek the facelift it didn't actually need. And you weren't as attached to these iterations of those characters, so that was really like.
I will say the way I say it, the way I see it, they took the science, they took the core elements of Star Trek out of it, and they made a summer blockbuster movie. They're fun. I like them for what they are.
But they could have been like any other sci-fi movie.
But there's no, the core wasn't there. The core Trek was not in those movies.
I like seeing Rose Tyler's first boyfriend in the first movie blow up that whole hospital or whatever. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, he blew up that underground.
That's right, not a hospital. It was like a lab or something.
I want to say it was like a Starfleet installation, maybe like a secret installation or something. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that like I say that I don't have any dislikes, but that is probably the lowest like dislike for me. Like I will.
But you're also a hipster grandpa, so you don't like new things sometimes at first.
No, I think everybody can agree with me on that. Like that movie.
I don't know if everyone can agree with you, but I think a lot of Star Trek fans don't like that movie. But it was well received when it came out.
Mm-hmm. We saw
it. And people who aren't Star Trek fans are like, I don't know why you're so upset. Like when I saw it, Jessica is like, why are you so angry? That was a pretty good movie. And then she watched Wrath of Khan. She's like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Yeah.
I was like, they just ripped it off.
Yeah. I remember getting a little antsy in the theater during that part. I was like, what is going on here? I feel betrayed a little bit.
I appreciated all the light inside the spaceship, and I appreciated Uhura, and that's and Bones. Bones was great.
I think they did great. They did great.
I think most of the cast is great, but what I love about Carl Urban as Bones is I feel like it's DeForest Kelley trapped on a ship with younger versions of everybody else.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah.
Yeah, he did a good job. It does have
positives. It does have positives.
Absolutely. I actually like the 09 Trek pretty well, and I think Beyond's pretty decent too.
I really, Beyond was decent. It kind of felt like an episode almost. Like if JJ Trek had been a series, it kind of feels like it could have been like a two-parter almost. The first, but the 09 Trek was great. I really enjoyed that one, even though I will say that they took the core elements of Trek out of it, but it was still a fun movie. And I like if there is a prequel comic book. Now it's not canon anymore because of Picard coming out, and I was really disappointed. But it shows Spock going through the wormhole, like them leading up to trying to save Romulus.
Mm-hmm.
Because they knew the star was going to go supernova. So that ship, that jellyfish-looking ship, Geordi actually helped him build that. Geordi became, after retiring from Starfleet, he became a ship designer, like a small ship designer / inventor kind of. And that's what he did. And Spock went to him with the specifications, and they built that ship together to try to make it to Romulus, in time. And of course, we know that he didn't, and they got pulled in through the wormhole, and that's why Nero blames Spock for what he did. And I know they kind of lightly touched on that in the movie, but in the book, in the it's a 4-issue comic book, and I'll have to let you borrow it sometime because it's really good, even though it's not canon anymore. Data is captain of the Enterprise, which I liked. He became captain of the Enterprise, the new Enterprise. No.
Would it be E?
No, because E came after. It wasn't the E. It was like the F.
Okay.
It was like a newer design.
Okay.
So
who helmed Enterprise C? That's what I want to know, because Next Gen is Enterprise D, right?
C was actually captained by was it Rachel Garrett? She was a female captain.
Okay, cool.
Watching you blink is like watching like the loading circle before Google gives me all the results. You're like, I can see the information loading.
I can see everything in my head. Just have to.
Oh my goodness. It's been a long day though.
Yeah. Well, there's an episode that you need to see. Next Gen.
It's all of them. Watch all the episodes of everything.
Well, what happens is, and the E shows up. There's an anomaly, and the E shows up. And in this anomaly, you might have seen stills, because in this one, the Enterprise has 3 warp missiles. And I know you've seen maybe pictures of it, but this is in that alternate timeline where the Federation went full on, like I can't remember if it was the Klingons or the Romulans or both that they were at war with. So they souped up the Enterprise D with like extra weapons, an extra warp nacelle. It had
it into a space tank.
Yeah, I had a disruptor on it. And I want to say Riker might have been captain during this. No, he wasn't. But anyway, Tasha Yar shows up. Okay, and she died early on. So Guinan is like, something's not right here. Something, like she looks at Tasha Yar and realizes something's off in this. And what it was, like the Enterprise C, it got destroyed by the Romulans in a battle by 2 Romulan warbirds. Yeah, it had a short lifespan. They blew it up, and then there was a long gap in there between the C and the D, becoming the flagship again. So it's a really good episode. I could talk on for it. Oh, it has Shooter McGavin in it. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, Christopher McDonald.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's in it, and he plays the love interest. What happens is the captain dies. So Yar and Christopher McDonald's character, who's the number 1, they kind of fall in love, and it turns out that they've got to send it back to blow up in order to restore everything. So Christopher McDonald volunteers, is like, I'm gonna take it back through the wormhole, and I'll make sure that we go out like we're supposed to. So Tasha leaves with him, and they go off.
Is there
through that wormhole? And
is there a Star Trek Smithsonian you can go work for? Because Rachel Garrett is the captain of the USS Enterprise C.
Yeah, I knew it. I knew it was Rachel Garrett. Anyway.
It only appears in the Next Generation episode Yesterday's Enterprise in 1990. The vessel's lifespan ended attempting to defend the Klingon outpost Narendra 3 from Romulan attack.
Romulans, yeah. Yeah, they were defending Klingon outposts. Anyway.
Enterprise B, helmed by Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yes. Yes.
Doesn't look as nervous. Piloting a captaining a starship for sure.
But before we try to close this, I just want, because you're obviously the Star Trek expert here, and I've kind of occasionally watched show to show. I don't think I've seen every episode of every show. Probably the most I've seen is Next Gen, because that was my introduction to Trek. Because I
we
feel
didn't get
like
into Voyager at all, and
that's
Voyager.
what I want your thoughts on Deep Space Nine and Voyager specifically, and then what do you like about the new iteration shows, which I have seen those.
Mm,
I'm
I love
currently
the
I'm currently watching Discovery right now. I just finished Lower Decks, or caught up with Lower Decks.
nice.
And I think it's pretty fun, and it's a love letter to the whole franchise.
It is. You've gotta have an open mind, and again, I love the Easter eggs. I think there are some funny moments because they're like inside jokes that nerds would
Yeah.
tell. Like, they're inside jokes that Star Trek fans would tell to each other. Almost.
And we're such nerds, we'll watch other nerds on YouTube tell us what all the Easter eggs were to make sure we didn't miss any.
But oh man,
we cross-reference our nerdness to make sure we're not missing out.
That last episode with the with the horn beast, I was laughing so hard. I could, man, where they're humping on the log and the other one's like, ooh, ooh, ooh. It starts like
He got tired, even the Watcher one.
And Boimler's like, oh, I think he's watching. I think he's enjoying it. Oh no.
You know that's Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan's son?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wait, what? Say what? Who?
Boimler. He's Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan's son.
Oh, I did. For some reason you said Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan, and I thought of Randy Quaid. Man, I'm tired.
Isn't he Jack Quaid? Right?
Yes. He's
that's
very
his name.
adorable. He looks just like.
And the actress who voices Mariner does a Star Trek podcast with Paul F. Tompkins.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. I'll have to check that out. So yes, my thoughts on DS9. I love it. It's awesome.
I know a lot of people say it's the best one because I think it's like the most dramatic and deals with like the most serious
like a
topics.
Soap opera if you want to watch it.
Yeah, you talked about religion. They really dive into the religion aspect of it. And the religion, the politics, they get into the Dominion War towards the end, which is awesome. It brought us a lot of the battles that we wanted to see. I liked the fact that they weren't going to new places like every week. Like it was set on a
Wasn't
station.
that a complaint about the show though when it first came out?
Yeah.
Like, they're not going anywhere. What kind of Star Trek show is this?
But everybody's coming to them. That's the point. Like it's a summer station.
Now by many fans they say it's the best series. And Captain Sisko's a total badass.
Oh,
of course he is.
He is. Especially after he shaves his head and gets the goatee, like in the 3rd season. Yeah. It's like it throws down. Sisko had the balls to punch Q. We got to give him that. He punched.
Which was probably very satisfying.
Yeah, he turned around and punched Q and knocked him on the ground, and Q didn't kill him. Like Q didn't just like zap him into non-existence.
Maybe
he
Q
respected
needed to be punched
him.
in the face
Yeah, he was the only one to stand up to Q, and Q respected him because of that.
I did love that Q reference in Lower Decks where they're like, go bother Picard. He's like, he's boring. He just quotes Shakespeare and makes wine.
Yeah, that was great. Now, Voyager's
also good.
Voyager gets a lot of hate, but I love it because Janeway's a badass. Tuvok is an awesome character.
Tuvok is my space dad.
Yeah, Chakotay being a Native American was cool. You've got Garrett Wang as Ensign.
Ensign, come on! I can hear the fans on your brain kicking up. You know
the dust is in there clogging that
Ensign
fan.
Kim?
It's
So
Ensign
why
Kim,
do you think Voyager gets so much hate? Why do you think that is?
Because the captain is a woman.
Probably
really, that's
because
the whole point. That's really bad.
and the fact that, and the fact that, Voyager, Voyager gets a lot of hate, but I love it because Voyager gets a lot of hate. But everybody's coming to them. That's the point. Like it's
Really bad.
And the fact that they were off on their own doing they were lost and there were no other Starfleet around. That's what I liked because like Voyager dealt a lot with Prime Directive. Like you had DS9, it dealt a lot with religion and like political stuff very heavily. Then you get into Voyager and it's straight up everything they run into. It's a struggle with the Prime Directive. Like, what do we do?
It's not like they can call for backup. It's not like a small neighborhood of space where all your friends are hanging out close by. And
this is all new.
Warp right to you. Yeah.
You know, this is, what are we doing? How do we survive? How do we get, because originally it was going to take them like 70 years to get home. And that's at top warp speed. You know?
Well, I think it's inventive because, so they do Next Gen. Roddenberry is still alive when that comes out. He's still involved with it. And that's basically like, let me do Star Trek, but let me do it in the way I didn't get to do it 20 years ago. So it would not make sense for them to keep doing Star Trek shows where they're doing the same thing. So it's interesting. Deep Space Nine, they are a space station. Right. And in Voyager, they're lost, you know. So that's it. It's interesting that they take different spins on the format and do something different, because then people would complain that they're just redoing the same thing over and over again.
Right.
And then Enterprise is a prequel, right? This is like, how many years is this? Is it 100 years before the original series? Is the 22nd century?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I loved Enterprise too.
So good.
Enterprise, it came out on Wednesdays, right? And that's the point in time where I kind of told my mom that I was not going to Wednesday night church anymore, because
I'm done with the Juanas, Mom. I'm a big one.
Yeah, like I was like, she was like, "You're going." I'm like, "No, ma'am. I'm sorry. Star Trek. I've been talking about this for the last 6 months. It comes out on Wednesday night, and I'm going to be here to record it." Because I recorded on VHS. I recorded like the first season and a half, and that's before I started going to work at the movie theater in Jacksonville. So I missed them, and I'd have to borrow them from my uncle and watch them because I worked on Wednesday nights. But yeah, I recorded them religiously, and that show was so great. The show was great because it showed everything kind of kicking off. I mean,
before they had all the bugs worked out.
Yeah, everything was still, like Lindsay said, everything is still full of bugs, full of kinks. They're still trying to figure out this Prime Directive thing. They're still babies in the galaxy.
Felt more like a submarine than a starship. It was much more close quarters and like bare metal railing, and
I really enjoyed it. Like the Vulcans and the humans had a lot of mistrust because the Vulcans, like after first contact,
proven ourselves yet to be.
Yeah, they kind of, and it's implied in the show that the Vulcans are the ones that they shared technology, but they held humans back just enough to keep them from going out, any further than we already had, because even the Vulcans were like, man, humans are not,
considering our track record with like getting ahead of ourselves technology wise. I think that was probably a pretty fair assessment of our of our abilities at the time. And
you've got Archer's distrust of the Vulcans, his dislike of Vulcans, because Archer's dad was the lead on the warp, the NX program, and it comes out that the Vulcans were holding everybody back, and he's kind of got that resentment. Like, man, my dad worked on this most of his life, and he never got to see it,
And it was because the Vulcans were holding everybody back, right?
Yeah, and it's the Vulcans' fault. So he's got that mistrust of T'Pol when the human Starfleet, or they're not even Starfleet at this point. No, they are. They're not. They have not. They're Starfleet, but they have not founded the United Federation of Planets yet, because that happens.
Got to find more planets to make a federation.
Yeah, well, they do.
By
the last episode, which I was disappointed. It gets a lot of hate. I don't hate it, but it does get a lot of. I was disappointed that they killed. You haven't seen it all yet.
You can spoil it for me. I mean, I'm doing this, and potentially that we'll end up possibly doing a Star Trek podcast. I'm just gonna
After
do it.
this, I think we should, because I'm having like, man, I
Christopher's
could go
got
on
hours worth of knowledge up in here.
weeks, and I've just got to get it out, man. Got to get it out of my
I
head.
mean, right now I have a free trial of no, it's $1 right now for Paramount Plus. So I was catching up on the new ones, but I think I'm just gonna because I watched 2 episodes of Next Gen today after 2 episodes of Discovery. But I think it's amazing that this franchise has lasted this long, especially since the original series was short-lived. It was canceled after 3 seasons and grew in popularity after it was canceled because of reruns, syndication, which, to my memory, Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager, even though they were current shows, I feel like they were on every network at different times of the day, different. I feel like there were a lot of shows in the 90s that didn't have a station. They were just syndicated, and you could catch them anywhere. You just had to be, which was weird.
I remember.
But what do you?
No,
why
really,
do you think it? How it survived? Because I think Star Trek also is a big component of fandom culture. Like, I don't think it would exist without Star Trek.
Right.
Because it's so big.
Yeah, it's so, because it caters to everyone. Like, I remember when in 2002, right after Nemesis, they came out and they were like, okay, we are going to cancel Enterprise after the 3rd season and or 4th season. And people were pissed. I was, because we loved it. But they had moved it to a later time slot on UPN. And they knew what they were doing. Like, and I really think the backlash from the gatekeepers and the whiny little punk fans that I'm trying to keep it, the fans that wanted to whine about it because it wasn't their Trek, it killed it. I really think it killed it. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, this is it. Because they were like, we don't have any other plans for Star Trek. We're done. And I remember talking with my uncle lots of times, like, man, did we really just witness the death of Star Trek? Like, it's been on all this time. You've had Next Gen, and then right at the last season of Next Gen, you had DS9 start up, and then towards the end of DS9, you had or the middle of DS9, you had Voyager start up. So for 18 years, there was always Star Trek on. Like, there was always Star Trek to watch. And
right, so Next Gen debuts in 87, Enterprise canceled in 04, 05.
I think it was 05.
It started in 2001, so if it only got 4 seasons, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Then
Because when it canceled, I was on the message boards, man. I was very active in trying to save it.
Message boards.
No joke. We were calling UPN. We were bombarding Paramount.
He was there again.
I was there 3,000 years ago. I organized.
I saw it.
Yeah, I organized a rally at the UPN station in Dallas, and we drove to Dallas. Me and my uncle, we drove to Dallas. We had about 60 people show up out front holding signs and in costumes, and the news was supposed to show up, but they never did, because I had talked to someone. I was disappointed in that. The newspaper showed up, though. We signed petitions, but we organized it, and all across the country, other people were doing it too. They had one in LA. They had one, I want to say, around New York. A lot of the major cities because we coordinated and we were having these this Save Star Trek rally. We're like, if they did it for the original series, we can do it for Enterprise. Like, you've got to keep Star Trek on. Like, we still want.
Did they rally to get that third season out of the original series?
Yes, because after the second season, they had moved it to a late time slot, and Bo Trimble is her name. Bo Trimble, if I'm pronouncing it right. If not, I'm sorry. Someone can correct me on that. Her husband, and her 2 daughters are the ones who started the movement to save Star Trek. And they were like, holy crap. So we'll go ahead and do the third season. They still kept it at a late time slot. They only got a third season out of it. What helped it was because the ratings were so low, it was a cheap show to pick up for syndication. So these TV stations could buy it on the cheap because it was just some silly sci-fi show, and they put it on 5 nights a week in syndication. That's what kept Star Trek alive. Was it going to syndication? Had it not gone to syndication, we probably wouldn't be here talking about it today. And I mean that. Like, there was a lot of stuff. They were ready to kill it, and thank God in the 80s, they let Gene.
Well, I guess the success of the films, he decided to do another series.
Right.
And Next Gen is considered one of the greatest TV shows, not just a great Star Trek or science fiction show. I've seen it listed as one of the greatest shows of television.
Oh, yeah.
And like I said, there's so many fans that say Deep Space Nine is the best. It's the best series.
You'll have fans. You've got people that are just like, no, Voyager is the best series. No, it's original series, or no, Enterprise is the best one.
And so we didn't have a TV show for a decade, but we did get the movies, the Kelvin movies in between.
Right. And I tell you what, after 2005, that was a long wait, dude. That was a long ass wait with no Star Trek at all. It was painful. I'm telling you. You would hear it through the years. You would hear like, oh, well, they're interested in doing a Worf series. So we get excited. Yeah, Worf. Freaking A, Captain Worf. Please do a Worf series. And then it would just be rumor. Like, Michael Dorn would come out and be like, no, that's a rumor. Disappointment. A year later. And this was really mean, but George Takei 1 year put out that he was going to do a Captain Sulu, because in Voyager you had the Voyager episode where they had because Tuvok was on the Enterprise B.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a flashback episode, and they invited all the actors back that was on the B and everything. It was Grace Lee Whitney and George Takei, and then of course you had Tuvok and all that. That was a really cool episode where he was having flashbacks. So you got to see that, and people were like, man, George Takei he's older, but he's still young enough that we could get a Captain Sulu series set during that time period. And that would have been great. And it turned out he had did it for a April Fool's joke.
The crew.
And it was so mean. Like, we got so excited. I remember going after work, going to straight to my uncle's house, and be like, oh my God, man, you got to see this. Crank up the dial-up internet. We got to check this out. So, and I remember him reading it. And he was like, no way, this is awesome. We got down the very bottom and like small print. It was like April's Fools, and we were both so devastated.
Kidding.
Yeah, that was so heartbreaking.
Now you get all the Star Trek you want, because how many series?
Shows.
So many.
And they're working on. They have a show, a Starfleet Academy, in production now, in pre-production.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Janeway's coming back in animation form, right?
From what I can tell, yes, she's coming back. She'll be a ship's hologram, and what it is, it's set in Prodigy. That's it, Star Trek Prodigy.
Yeah.
We just watched 2 trailers for it.
Yeah, it looks like a science vessel or an experimental vessel that is lost, and it's set in a part of space, in Trek space, that we've never seen before. So they're going to introduce new aliens and stuff like that. But it's about these, and it's set for kids. It's going to be on Nickelodeon, which I'm excited.
Yeah.
That's something that
afterwards,
I can watch.
Like it's going to be on Paramount Plus, and then it'll show on Nickelodeon for people who don't have Paramount Plus.
Yeah, and I like that. That's good for them. I want, because I think with it being a kid show, I really hope that it gets a lot of kids into Star Trek, to younger kids, because it is set with these alien kids escaping off of this planet, and I guess Janeway is kind of their teacher, because it's a ship's hologram, and it's them making their way to Federation space, and I'm sure they'll, along the way, have their adventures, and it looks like some bad guys chasing them. It looks like they were on a junkyard or something, and it was this guy's ship, and they stole it and took off in it, and who knows?
And we're getting a Captain Pike series, right?
Strange New Worlds, and I am most excited about that because they are going back to the episodic formula. Instead of each season being one long story arc, they're going back to the individual episodes, which I like, and I think now I like the seasons where it's one big continuous story, but I also kind of miss the each week going and
now
doing
were all the older shows episodic, or was it just the first 2?
What do you mean? Like the
like the original Next Gen were very much episodic for the most part, except for if there was like a 2-parter.
DS9 was episodic, but they did have a lot of 2-parter to maybe 3-parters, where it even remained episodic in the Dominion War. Like they would focus on the Dominion War. They'd have a couple episodes, and then they would have like a filler episode or 2 that kind of focused on something else. So did Voyager. You had your story arcs, but they would always kind of wrap it up towards the.
So it's just been with the recent series that they've made it more of like an overall arc, because they've adapted to modern television, because that's what modern television for the most part is now. It's more, which I guess is why people now like TV more than they used to, because TV used to be looked down upon as a lesser art form than film because it was episodic. I kind of miss shows being episodic, because then that means you didn't have, if you missed an episode, it's not like, oh no,
You don't know what's going on.
Right.
But as someone who watches and appreciates art, I do like the overarching story, because it keeps me more invested to watch.
I do like both forms, but I think
both forms are great.
Star Trek needs an episodic show. And I think Strange New Worlds is going to do that. I think it's the perfect show to do that with. Young Uhura is going to be in it.
So we're going to have a third actress playing Uhura.
Yes. You're going to have legacy characters. You're going to have Nurse Chapel, Uhura.
Doctor, what's his name?
Doctor.
Is Spock showing up in this show? Because, he
Spock
has... And it's going to be the same actor that played him in Discovery.
Mm-hmm. Ethan Peck, who is the grandson of Peck. You know who I'm talking about?
Peck.
Classic
Peck.
actor. You know,
say the word enough times until it stops making sense and you'll remember.
eat.
Would you like me to Google it?
Yeah, Lindsay's gonna go. You know him,
Ethan
man.
Peck?
You know who I'm talking about.
And you said he's the grandson
He,
of
he is
someone?
he is the grandson of a famous
Gregory Peck.
Gregory Peck.
Gregory Peck. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Thank
Duh.
you.
I don't know why I wasn't thinking of Atticus Finch. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking like Bill Peck. No, Stephen Peck. No, Gregory.
So we have tons of Star Trek content more than ever. Would you like to see more movies? Because we haven't gotten any movies since the TV shows kind of have resurfaced.
I'm actually kind of okay with not having any more movies.
With where the TV is now, like who needs a
Ye-
movie?
Yeah, they unless they like Strange New Worlds, we know how it's going to end with Pike.
Yeah,
know.
we already know where that's going. But I'm glad he's finally getting his dues since there really wasn't much of him before Discovery brought him back.
That's a whole new era of Enterprise. That was 5 years of the USS Enterprise that we don't know really much about, other than Spock was there. That was one of his first commands. But
yeah, because was Nichelle Nichols in the original pilot too? Because I know Leonard Nimoy was.
I can't remember if she was in. I don't think she was in the original pilot.
Okay,
No,
so
the first pilot.
Spock is the only character that carried over.
Right.
Yeah, I don't really need a movie either. It is glad to finally see more. I know they brought Pike in the Abrams verse too, but it'll be nice to see a character that was supposed to be the captain and didn't end up being the captain.
Did you know that there was a captain before him, Captain Robert April?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there was. I want to say it went from. I'm trying to remember my lineage. It went from Enterprise, Archer, to Robert April, to Pike. But there was some time period in between there.
I'm glad there was a woman in between because I'm like, how many white dudes did it take before it was someone who wasn't a white dude as a captain?
Yeah. But no, Robert April was a woman. Well, it was a guy. Robert April.
But he's talking about Rachel Garrett.
Oh, you're talking about Rachel Garrett. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, in between Picard.
A lot of people are like, well, there weren't any women captains. Now, there weren't any prominent women captains, but if you look through the episodes, Geordi's mom was a captain. You had Garrett. There were several other episodes that showed like women captains or women that were higher in command than Picard. Which was kind of refreshing to see in the 80s. You had,
so there were women admirals.
Yeah, you had women admiral. Like, yeah, there are episodes where women, it shows women in like places of higher command, which is refreshing. I mean, it wasn't prominent like it should have been, but it was hinted at. It was hinted at, and they show it in those episodes. So, it's not a James Bond, man talk, type of situation.
Considering I'm not going to call her a flirt, what a womanizer Gene Roddenberry was, how easily it could have been a series like that.
Yeah.
Because he had 2 relationships with 2 actresses heavily involved in the original series.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, his son is by I forget her name, but yeah.
Oh yeah, his son is Majel Barrett Roddenberry.
Mm-hmm.
And she does all the computer voice, and she's Deanna Troy's mom in Next Gen, which I always
what a character Deanna Troy's mom is.
Always loved her character because in the interaction with her and Picard was always great. I thought it was funny, but Did you know that she volunteered this and she went and recorded there's a whole library of her voice of just nothing but computer commands
And responses.
and responses and everything. She recorded a whole library full of it so they could continue to use
Is Ranger out?
her voice. Did he get out?
Yes.
Yeah, he's at the
He's
front
barking
door.
outside of the front door to be let
Let
in.
me in. He got out of our backyard.
He had to.
He's ready to go to
make a
bed.
point.
Yeah, come on,
Yeah.
guys. It's late. Anyway,
Well,
but yeah, that's I
We'll give
like
it to Gene Roddenberry that he had women in command before the United States ever did.
yeah, right.
We're still waiting.
well, he
on
was
that.
ahead of the curve of a lot of things.
Yeah. Well, we will go ahead and wrap it up because it is late and we've got to go. Now,
I'm gonna go yell at the ensign barking outside of
well,
our
we need to do our little thing for
quarters.
everyone listening. Now,
Oh yes. Let me pull that up.
I posted. I should have done this days ago, but all this was kind of last minute. I posted a little thing for our reject members. If I wanted you to share what Star Trek meant to you, and we had 7 people, I think.
7 or 8 people.
7 or 8 come in and respond about what Star Trek meant with them, and I thank you all because they were sweet stories, and I always like to hear stories like that about growing up, watching it with your dad or your grandparents or
Trek. Can you confirm or dispel the notion I have in my head? Trek created convention culture because Star Trek conventions. They were the first fandom that was like, yeah, conventions. I know they had comic book like sales that were conventions technically.
they had.
But Trek fans were the ones that were like, oh no, we're coming in costume.
Mhm.
We're gonna have pageants and shows.
That was the first major
fan clubs that meet up at people's houses.
Yeah, that was the first major
Convention culture.
convention
Thanks, Star Trek.
for a fandom.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, give it to Star Trek for that first convention. But anyway, we decided. I decided that I was going to do a Star Trek Nemesis movie poster, but I was like, nah, man, it's Nemesis. Not a lot of people like that. I mean, I think it's cool. It's a cool poster, but I was like, I want something unique. So back in the day, I'll keep this short. Went on vacation with my parents. We did a cross-country thing. They decided to take the day and surprise me, go through Las Vegas, and I nearly wet myself when I found out where we were going. We went to Star Trek The Experience in Las Vegas.
I love that they took their oldest son to Vegas to go to the Star Trek
Yeah,
experience and not to go like hit the casinos.
Well,
and see the shows.
Well, I was like 16 at the time,
Yes,
so
yes,
16
I
or
know,
7,
I know.
17, so I couldn't, I wasn't allowed to go to the casinos. But we went in, did the tour, did the ride, ate at Cork's, which was amazing. But I was lucky enough to get this Cork's Bar and Grill menu, okay? Rules of acquisition on it. Pretty cool. It's got the hamburger and, lots of cool frilly alien drinks and whatnot. Themed food. Gok, Klingon Gok and stuff. So what I'm going to do, and they'll have to give me about 2 weeks to do this because they're going to do it by hand. I'm going to have a color copy made, a full-size color copy. I will laminate it and put it together for you, and that is going to be the prize. And I thought that was very unique because not a lot of people have menus floating around from Quarks. I thought it was a unique item. So there you go. We will pick a winner, and Lindsay has her little spin wheelie thing
With everybody's
with
names.
everybody's
Get down,
names.
Kat.
Let's call out the names. So now I'm going to make another video tomorrow
I'm not going to
to
call out the names of everybody on here. I don't want to hurt their feelings they didn't win.
announce the winner. Yeah, that's true.
Just trust me.
Yeah.
I have personal experience with that. Don't call out
So
everybody's name if not everybody wins.
how many people do we have?
6, 7.
We've got 7 people. And well, I mean, you can go back and look at the comments and pretty much realize who's going to be here, but
Who's where?
who's where. But anyway, we're going to spin and pick a winner.
Okay, let me spin this. It's a really cool little roulette app that I use for a lot of things because I can't just carry a handful of dice around. And it's going to tell me who wins in a minute. Just Pamela Brown.
All right, Miss Pamela Brown.
Congratulations.
Yay, congratulations. And you shared some really cool stories about what Star Trek meant to you and getting to go to a lot of the conventions and the Star Trek cruises during the late 80s, early 90s. And she shared a really cool picture of Gene Roddenberry on one of those cruises in a little Hawaiian straw hat, and looks like he's in a swim trunks, but it looks like he's got a microphone and he's probably telling a story. But thank you for sharing that, Miss Pamela Brown. And
thank you to everybody for sharing your Star Trek stories.
Yeah.
It makes my heart warm and fuzzy to see other Star Trek nerds.
Yeah, that was the point. I really enjoyed everybody's story and getting to know what Star Trek meant to you. And I thank you all for participating. I will make another video tomorrow to make another little formal announcement and get with you, Miss Pamela Brown, and we'll get that sent out to you. And
shout out to your mom for her very Ferengi-like acquisition of the original menu, so that we could do that.
Yes, she's the one. Hey, she's the one that asked, because they weren't giving these out. She's the one that asked the waitress. She goes, "Can I have this menu?" And the waitress was like,
"I'm not going to chase you for it."
I'm not. Yeah, she's like, I mean, if you put it in your purse, I'm not going to say anything. So my mom walked out of there with a giant menu sticking out of her purse. But
Her
also,
mom is ride or die.
She's ride or die. Yeah, she also got me some silverware from that place too, which was not asked for. But anyway, yeah. Mom, don't take the silverware. But anyway, thank you all for if you joined or if you listen later. Thank you for listening to us go on about gushing over Star Trek, because it really is one of my favorite, probably my all-time favorite. And I'm a Star Wars fan through and through, but Star Trek has been there for me a lot longer than Star Wars.
Those are not mutually exclusive.
I'm gonna say,
but I love
thanks
them both.
for listening to Chris mostly talking, me and Lindsay kind of coming in every once in a while and being like, "Hey, I like that part of that thing."
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I know I should have. I just didn't.
Maybe you should record a library.
I'm chatterbox. Like normally, I try to sit back and be reserved, but man, Star Trek, I could go on, and it's been a while. I have not gotten to just really cut loose and talk about it in a while. So
just like Star Trek as a whole has hope for humanity's future.
Yeah.
Getting to talk about Star Trek was the hope for the end of our day. And it was very, very uplifting.
It really was.
To talk about something that we like.
And remember, folks, we want the Trek future. We don't want Mad Max.
Well, we'd like to skip the Mad Max part of the Trek future.
Or Handmaiden's Tale, which is where we're about at now.
Oh, God, I feel like we live in that society right now, especially the state of Texas.
Well,
the state of
yeah, I could go on. We got to go. But anyway, now tonight we were supposed to do Evil Dead, right?
Yeah, sure. Evil Dead.
Well, sorry.
Cody is sleeping.
I could have sworn we had decided Evil Dead, but maybe not.
Evil Dead's fine.
Okay, well, tomorrow night, are you okay with tomorrow night, or do you want to wait and do it next week, or how do you want to do it?
I mean, if we do it tomorrow night, we're just going to be busy people this week with podcasting.
Yeah, because Friday is Royal Tenenbaums.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, we'll do it next week. Originally, we were supposed to do it this week, but Star Trek Day came up and it ended up being on Wednesday. So
what is time?
What is time? Yeah. Paradox. Who knows? Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. But anyway, yes, next week we will pick back up, going back into spooky season, and we will kick off again with Evil Dead.
Which I've never seen. I'm excited.
It'll be fun.
Yeah.
Great movie.
So I'll be cheesy. Everybody, be safe, be kind, and remember that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. So think
Yes.
about that when you're out and about.
Very true, especially now. Especially now. That could not be any more truer than
Trek remains
today.
relevant at all times.
Yep. Oh, and a shout out. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch 2 documentaries. Trek Nation, which is done by Roddenberry's son, which is really good. And then go and watch My Name is Spock, which is done by Leonard Nimoy's son. And a little tidbit: Leonard Nimoy's son is married to Dax from DS9. They got married a couple of years ago. Yeah. So
Star Trek keeps it in the family.
Yeah. But anyway,
What We Left Behind, that's a Trek documentary.
What We Left Behind?
No, I'm thinking of something. No.
Oh, there is a documentary about Deep Space Nine.
Yes, What We Left Behind. That's another great show, documentary. I was kind of sad that Avery Brooks didn't come back to do that, but everybody else did. What they got that Ira Stephen Burr and all of the writers, which is the cool thing about that. They got together and they sat in a room for about a day and they hashed out a continuation of DS9 where everybody would be.
I don't know how old that documentary is, but the actor who played Odo, was he there? Because I know he passed.
He was there and Nog was there. This was done right before they passed, which was sad. But yeah, we got to see them. We got to see them talk. The only one who did not show back up was Avery Brooks, and he teaches now, and he's just not interested in acting or doing anything.
Which is his right.
He's right. Yeah, I mean, if that's what he likes. But yeah, I was kind of sad that he didn't come back. But hey, what are you gonna do? Anyway, guys.
Live long and prosper.
Yes, live long and prosper. Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you for letting us talk for almost 2 hours. Man, I'm telling you, if you let me
loose, short for you. Goodness.
If you let me loose, I could probably go all night. You give me just episodes or a series or anything. We didn't get into the soundtracks,
I didn't even get to talk about the new series,
which are great. Yeah. So much, guys. But hey, I'm hoping that from this stems a Star Trek show. I'm hoping that we can get something going because, man, I mean, there's just so much to cover. There's 800 episodes to cover, plus the movies.
That's a lot of content.
I've seen them all.
All the content's up here, though. He's got
800 hours. My brain's gonna explode. Anyway, I am by far not an expert, guys. Like, I know quite a bit, but there are people out there who could rattle off star dates. I mean, I might could give you a few depending on the episode, but I try. But anyway, guys, we'll beam out of here. Beam me up, Scotty. Yeah.